So my son, he goes to occupational therapy, and in the folder of the guy that works with him were these monsters from the Scooby-Doo show from back in the 1960s,
Oh,
1970s, and he
okay.
just got so intrigued by them because they're all very unique like colors and designs and stuff.
Yeah.
And so this past weekend, I was like, okay, let's see what he thinks about it. So Scooby Doo, Where Are You? The first iteration of the show. We
Excellent.
watched several episodes, and he loves it. And it's always interesting just to hear his perspective on it because it's the gang solving mysteries, trying to figure out who. In my head, I'd always remembered that there was some type of real estate scheme going on of some kind. Turns out, actually, that's not the case. It's only a few episodes, but it certainly feels that way sometimes.
Somehow there was an ongoing theme of realtors and people getting
Exactly.
trouble over property. Crazy.
Exactly. But it's also cool because it's a show that even like when I was growing up, it was on like Cartoon Network, and it was on a lot of the places that I was basically I grew up with them as well. Obviously, I didn't grow up in the 60s or 70s, but when it had like this revival back in the 90s, I was
Right.
able to kind of experience it. So both Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And then also the Scooby-Doo show are just really fun. They're just really fun shows. They're shows that, just like we've talked about before, they're shows that you can enjoy as a parent and be able to get a lot out of and find a lot of comedy in, especially because of how dated it is in many ways, right? Because
Hmm.
obviously it was made in the 60s and 70s, but then the kids can also really enjoy it too. And it's also a way of introducing, you could argue, like some scarier things that aren't really that scary.
Right.
So it's a way of having got like sense of control where, yeah, I mean, it's good for kids to kind of be like, I don't really know what this is, and then to realize, oh, it's totally fine.
Right.
And that's actually been something that's been really cool to have that discussion with is, hey, there's no monsters. It's just there's a guy in the mask, right? It's not
Hmm.
real. So it's also a way of helping to kind of teach him about how there are things that we can think of and can conceive in our minds, but they're not actually real. And so that's
Right.
been really cool to kind of have this as a way where it's like, yeah, he might have that bit of like being scared at first, but then he very quickly realizes, oh yeah, it is just a guy in a mask, and there's no reason to be afraid of any of these things. So
Yeah, that's great.
I recommend both Scooby Doo, Where Are You? And the Scooby Doo Show. There's obviously several other iterations that bring in like Scrappy Doo and stuff,
Hmm.
and they're all basically of the same caliber, I would argue. But yeah, Scooby Doo, Where Are You? I think is the better of the shows because it's the original one. So I give that one probably like a 9 out of 10, and
Hmm.
then the Scooby Doo Show probably like an 8.5 out of 10. So those would be my TV show recommendations of the week. And
Nice.
yeah, and just one movie recommendation, and I will say it's a bit of a soft recommendation because it's a movie that the way it was described by other reviewers in my space that I think are really good was that it's made for kids with single digits, like kids of the single digit era, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
it's like if you've got a
I was
1 year.
thinking of like
Yeah, so,
hands and
sorry,
fingers and
like a two,
oh my
3 year old to a
gosh.
9 year old.
Right.
Anything older, double digit wise, kids may not find it as entertaining,
Hmm.
because it's very just low, like not necessarily like low IQ, but like it's very bare bones
Right.
type of comedy. Like it's
Yeah.
just very low level comedy, you could argue, but that's also what kids tend to like lower again single digit age kids tend to enjoy, and that's the film Dog Man. So this
I
movie
was
came out of
wondering about this.
I was not able to see it in theaters, but it's now available on video on demand, and
Oh, cool.
so the film is now available for a lot more people to have access to because it had a decent opening weekend, but since then has kind of fallen off a bit. So don't think they're really expecting to lose too much on this as far as lack of anything because they weren't going to make a whole lot of it at the box office
Hmm.
anyway. But yeah, so it tells the story, and this is where it kind of is can at the very beginning it I think can appeal to the parents a bit more because it almost goes a little bit like RoboCop, where it's
Oh.
like you have this accident that happens in this cartoon way, right? So it's nothing crazy, violent or anything,
Hmm.
but ultimately you have one guy, the man in this dog man situation. His face is all wrapped up, and they tell him your face is no good anymore. And then the dog is there, and his body's all wrapped up. It's like, dog, your body's no good no more. And so they're like, okay, let's. What if we put the head of the dog on the man? Oh, that's brilliant. And so then you
Solid
get
medicine right there.
Dogman, exactly. So then you get Dogman, and so it's done in this very silly, comical way. The villain is a cat, so it's even more appropriate because Dogman is really, really good at catching the
Hmm.
bad, evil cat. Okay, perfect. Like that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with in this movie, right? But it has some comedic elements to it. There's probably my favorite sequence is actually in the beginning, because they're they're doing a chase sequence, and then there's a guy who's holding this container, this box, and it's a box of bees. And so on it, it says like box of bees, and then
Hmm.
when the box opens up, it's literally the letter B. So it's a bunch of letter B's
Oh,
flowing out of it, and I was like,
nice.
"Oh, that's clever." I actually find that entertaining.
Right.
But that's the kind of stuff it has in there. Again, this is a PG movie, only about a 90-minute runtime, and it's not the best thing in the world. It's not a film that I would go back to, but it's definitely one that I think that if you're looking for something, especially one of your younger kids, to enjoy and to also not be offensive and to not have anything that you don't want your kids watching, Dogman I think has that. It's a very safe movie for parents, and so I would actually probably give it like a 6.5 out of 10. So again, I wouldn't give it a high score, but it's definitely a bit in that decent era, like like almost 50-50 percent range there. But I'm gonna give it a rad score on the critical scale only because I do think that it's good for kids.
Excellent. All right, Odin, thank you once again, man.
Of
Appreciate it.
course, no problem.